to Lake County, Speaker and Mrs. Gingrich.
Thank you, Commissioner. I want to thank all of the Tea Parties who have made such a big difference and who have begun to change politics and government in America. I think you represent citizens who are sick and tired of being told by Washington what to do and sick and tired of watching your country decay because the power structure in Washington doesn't want to make any changes. They would rather manage the decay as long as they stay in charge. And we're here to tell them that their time is over and that the time has come for real change and real reform. And let's be very clear. Many of you probably noticed a number of attack ads and all sorts of junk, and that's what it is. This is the desperate last stand of the old order, throwing the kitchen sink, hoping something sticks, because if only they can drown us in enough mud raised with money from companies and people who foreclosed on Floridians. Let's be really clear. You're watching ads paid for with the money taken from the people of Florida by companies like Goldman Sachs, recycled back into ads to try to stop you from having a choice in this election. That's what this is all about. And the question you have to ask yourself is, what level of gall does it take to think that we collectively are so stupid that somebody who owns lots of stock in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, somebody who owns lots of stock in a part of Goldman Sachs that was explicitly foreclosing on Floridians, somebody who's surrounded by lobbyists who made a living protecting Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, can then build his entire negative campaign in Florida around a series of ads that are just plain false, because they're counting on us being too stupid or too timid. And of course, if I mention anything about them, the entire establishment jumps up and says, that's cheating. How can you tell the truth? Don't you know that's politically incorrect? Remember, the Republican establishment is just as much an establishment as the Democratic establishment, and they are just as determined to stop us. Make no bones about it. This is a campaign for the very nature of the Republican Party and the very opportunity for a citizen conservatism to defeat the power of money and to prove that people matter more than Wall Street and that people matter more than all the big companies that are pouring the cash in to run the ads that are false. I have been thinking about this for weeks, because when we ran a totally positive campaign, by the middle of December, people had reacted and we were ahead by 12 points on Gallup. And what happened was we were drowned in a sea of mud in Iowa. Mud paid for with special interest money, mud paid for by lobbyists in Washington, and a candidate who was willing to say anything and do anything because he's so desperate to be president, he doesn't think the truth matters. Well, I'm here as a citizen. I frankly don't care what the Washington establishment thinks of me because I intend to change them. That's true. We have to ultimately focus on beating Barack Obama, but we're not going to beat Barack Obama with some guy who has Swiss bank accounts, Cayman Island accounts, owns shares of Goldman Sachs while it forecloses on Florida, and is himself a stockholder in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac while he tries to think the rest of us are too stupid to put the dots together and understand what this is all about. The choice, I can live with the American people's decision. If the American people have all the information, I can live with whatever they decide. But I just had a good friend call me from Tampa who watched 12 negative ads last night, all of them paid for with special interest money, all of them dishonest. Let me give you an example. This person wearing, I really miss Reagan. Stand up and let them all see it. She has a Ronald Reagan and an aircraft carrier hat. Gets better and better. I I might mention, Michael Reagan, who has endorsed me, tries to go out and visit the Ronald Reagan aircraft carrier every time it comes back to home port. Now I want to take the example about Reagan. I first met with Ronald Reagan in 1974. I was a candidate for Congress. He came to Georgia. I was allowed to take him to the airport because they were so grateful anybody would run as a Republican in Georgia in 1974. His plane was late. We chatted for a little while. He finally got bored listening to me and said, "How would you like to see how I give speeches?" I thought, this would be good. And it was. I was on his side in the Panama Canal fight. I helped develop supply-side economics. I worked with the campaign and actually put together the first Capitol Steps event in history in September of 1980. I worked with him as a member of Congress for 8 years. In 1995 at the Goldwater Institute, Nancy Reagan said that Ronald Reagan's torch had been passed to me as Speaker of the House and that I was carrying out the values he believed in. During that entire period, Mitt Romney was a money-making independent. There's nothing wrong with being money-making, but he had no interest in politics. He wasn't involved in helping save the country. And he was an independent. In 1992, he gave money to Democrats for Congress. He voted in the Democratic primary for Paul Tsongas, the most liberal candidate. This is the man who stood up the other night and questioned my credentials as a Reaganite. This is the kind of gall they have to think we're so stupid and we're so timid that we'll let somebody who voted for Paul Tsongas in 1994, he's running for the U.S. Senate to the left of Teddy Kennedy. Do you know how hard it is to run to the left of Teddy Kennedy? And he says, you know, I don't want to go back to the Reagan-Bush years. I was an independent then. Now, he won't tell you that now, because he's counting on us not having YouTube. That's how much he thinks we're stupid. And we're not stupid. The message we should give Mitt Romney is, you know, we aren't that stupid and you aren't that clever. So he has lobbyists come out to attack me and the press takes them seriously. They run over and say, well, why do you think this person is saying this? Because they're against changing Washington. Because they don't want a real reformer. They want somebody who will preside over the decay as long as they get to make money out of the decay. But real change, really tearing the old order apart, boy, that's scary. That'd be like Reagan in 1980. That'd be like the contract with America in 1994. Well, let me tell you, I am running for president to represent you, not to represent the Washington lobbyists, not to represent Goldman Sachs, not to represent the people who have been ruling this country, and I need your help. To be honest, I think that this is a very close race in Florida. I think all the weight of his negative advertising and all the weight of his dishonesty has hurt us some. But if I can convince each and every one of you to get on Facebook, to get on Twitter, to get on your email list, to call your friends, this group alone is big enough to start to turn this around. I can promise you, I am going to fight every day from here until we win the nomination, because I am not going to allow the money interests that are buying those ads to come in here and to come into other states to misinform people and then to think that we're too dumb to fight back. And all I ask you to do is look at the facts. What is the only thing I ever did that was publicly recorded involving Freddie Mac? It is in the New York Times in July of 2008. I told the House Republicans, vote no, do not give them any money. By the way, that's when Mitt Romney owned stock and when his lobbyists were lobbying on behalf of Freddie Mac. So here's the guy on this side who's making money out of Freddie Mac and making money out of Goldman Sachs as it forecloses on Floridians and is surrounded by the lobbyists paid by Freddie Mac. And he thinks we're dumb enough he can attack me and start the fight and we're going to back down? I don't think so. And I'll tell you what. because I was involved in that period and because I lived through it, I will confess to you. I am channeling Ronald Reagan in 1975-76, and I'm channeling the way that he used the Panama Canal and the fact that he didn't back down. He lost 5 straight primaries, and he didn't quit for a day. And he said, you know, I'm going to keep telling the truth, and I'm going to break through with the truth. And once the truth starts rolling, it has its own power. And so I'm going to ask each and every one of you. We have 2 challenges this year. Claim the Republican Party for the forces of reform and defeat Barack Obama decisively. But we do not have just one challenge. Don't kid yourselves. I don't believe it is very likely that Governor Romney could last in a debate with Barack Obama, and I think we ought to be honest about this. We need a solid conservative who can stand there and look straight in the eye of the president and say, Mr. President, you are wrong and your policies have failed. The campaign this fall will be about 3 things. We are for economic growth, for job creation, for every American having a paycheck. The president is for stagnation, unemployment, and food stamps. That's how big the difference is. In the last week, the president has killed a pipeline in the Midwest that would have created thousands of jobs, increased our energy security, and tied us closer to Canada. He is driving Canada into a partnership with China, which is absolutely, totally destructive of the interest of the United States. At the same time, the president made a proposal the other night to double the tax, which would actually mean doubling the capital gains tax, which would actually crush the stock market, drive down every pension fund in the country, drive down every 401k, guarantee that capital would flee the United States to invest elsewhere. I mean, I either think they didn't know what they were saying, or they just don't care how much damage they do to the American economy. Let's have a vote. We're going to have 2 choices. I'm going to give you 2 choices, the don't knows and the don't cares. Okay. How many of you think they don't know? Not many. How many of you think they just don't care?
Yay! How about the fair tax?
Think the fair tax is a very good idea, which I've agreed to appoint a commission to lay out for the entire country to look at, so that the entire country has an opportunity to decide. So the first part of the campaign is going to be economics. We know how to create jobs. Working with Ronald Reagan in the 1980s, 16 million jobs were created. Lower taxes, less regulation, more American energy, and respect for the people who create jobs. Working as Speaker of the House with Bill Clinton, we reformed welfare. 2 out of 3 people went to work or went to school. Poverty for children dropped because their parents were earning a living. We had the second spending cut since the World War II. The first spending cut was 1981. Only twice have we actually cut domestic discretionary spending in real dollars. Only twice. 1981 when I was a sophomore and voted for it, and 1995 when I was Speaker. We cut the first tax cut in 16 years, the largest capital gains tax cut in history. We created 11 million new jobs in 4 years, and as a result, unemployment dropped to 4.2%. Because spending was coming down and revenue from increased jobs was going up. In